A lot of people are scared of getting outside. They've never been outside. They've never been barefoot, but that's what Turtle Island is. It's a safe place.
The heartbreaking tragedy of Eustace Conway from Mountain Mena Boy, who chose the forest over the city. Eustace Conway isn't your average man. While most people dream of city jobs, big homes, and vacations, Eustace chose something very different. He walked away from normal life to live in the wild. He was just 17 years old when he left home to live in a teepee in the forest. He cooked over a fire, gathered water from creeks, and slept under the stars. This wasn't just a short trip into the woods, it became his life. Later, he hiked the full Appalachian Trail and even rode a horse across the United States from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. Some people doubted the exact distance of that journey, but Eustace didn't care about the numbers. His message was clear. Humans have lost their connection to nature, and he wanted to get it back. He admired old explorers and believed that living simply with nature was the key to happiness. Eustace saw nature not as something to visit, but as a place to live, grow, and find peace. Building Turtle Island, a dream turned real after spending years living outdoors. Eustace found a piece of land near Boone, North Carolina, in 1987. It was wild, beautiful, and untouched by modern buildings or traffic. He named it Turtle Island Preserve and bought it with the dream of creating a place where people could return to a simpler way of life. At first, it was just 107 acres, but it later grew to over 1,000 acres. On that land, Eustace built everything by hand. He made log cabins, raised animals, grew food, and taught others how to live off the land. Children and adults came from across the country to learn old skills like building fires, growing crops, or making tools. Turtle Island became a living classroom. There were no cell phones, no fast food, no TV, just fresh air, honest work, and quiet nights. Eustace didn't want people to pretend they were living in the past. He wanted them to really feel what it was like to be part of nature. For many visitors, it was the first time they felt truly alive. That's what made Turtle Island so special. It brought people back to their roots. Becoming a star, the cost of fame in 2012. The world changed for Eustace when the History Channel started a new show called Mountain Men. The show followed several people who lived far away from modern cities, and Eustace was one of them. Viewers were quickly drawn to his honest lifestyle. He wasn't acting. He didn't put on a show. He was simply living his life as he always had, cutting wood, riding horses, and teaching people how to survive in the wild. People across the country fell in love with his story, but with fame came problems. Cameras were now following him. People wanted interviews. Strangers showed up on his land, and worst of all, government officials started paying more attention. They questioned the safety of his buildings, the way his classes were run, and even the materials he used. Suddenly, the peaceful life Eustace had worked so hard to build was being judged by people who didn't understand it. Rules and laws began creeping into his world. Eustace had spent his life avoiding city systems, but now those systems were coming for him. Losing a best friend, the death of Preston Roberts among all the hard times in Eustace's life. One event hurt him more than anything else, the death of his closest friend, Preston Roberts. Preston wasn't just a helper at Turtle Island. He was more like a brother. The two had worked side by side for decades. They fixed roofs together, carried logs together, and taught people together. Preston was calm, smart, and strong. He knew how to listen to nature, just like Eustace. When Preston became sick with cancer in 2017, Eustace was heartbroken. He stayed by his friend's side until the very end. When Preston passed away, it left a huge hole in Eustace's heart. He later shared that some days he didn't even feel like getting out of bed. Turtle Island didn't feel the same without Preston. His laughter, his advice, and his quiet strength were gone. Many fans of the show felt the loss too. Preston had become a familiar face, and his death reminded everyone that even strong mountain men are not immune to pain. For Eustace, it was not just the loss of a friend, it was the loss of a piece of his soul. Fighting for his land, the war against red tape after becoming famous and losing Preston, Eustace faced another battle, this time against government rules. In 2012, not long after Mountain Men aired, local officials tried to shut down Turtle Island. They said the buildings didn't meet the safety codes. They said the cabins weren't inspected properly. But to Eustace, this felt wrong. He had built everything with care. These buildings had stood for years without problem. They were made from natural materials, not factory boards. They were strong, safe, and true to his vision. The government didn't understand that. They wanted everything to follow modern rules. Even in a place built on old ways, the news quickly spread and Eustace supporters took action. Thousands of people signed petitions to keep Turtle Island open. Eventually, the fight was won, and Eustace was allowed to continue running the preserve. But the message was clear. The outside world didn't leave people like Eustace alone. Even when you live in the forest, paperwork and politics can find you. It was a reminder that living off the grid is not as simple as it once was. Living between the worlds. Even though Eustace became a TV star, he never stopped living the way he always had. He still chopped his own firewood, rode horses instead of driving cars, and ate food he grew himself. But now he lived into worlds. One was the peaceful world of nature he had always loved. The other was the noisy world of cameras, fans, and attention. He didn't hate the fame it gave him a chance to share his message, but it also brought stress. People expected more from him. They asked questions, made comments, and sometimes misunderstood his purpose. But through it all, Eustace stayed true to himself. He gave interviews when needed, but spent most of his time working the land. He told stories about close calls with wild animals, cold winters, and strange visitors. And even though he smiled, you could see the sadness in his eyes. He had lost his best friend. He had fought battles most people never see. And he had learned that even nature can't always protect you from the outside world. Still, he didn't give up. He kept teaching, building, and living the life he believed in. The quiet tragedy behind the mantle. What is the true tragedy of Eustace Conway? It's not a single moment or one big event. It's the quiet, slow heartbreak of seeing your dream pushed back by the modern world. Eustace spent his whole life trying to live simply. He worked with his hands, trusted the earth, and welcomed others to learn from him. But the world kept changing. Fame brought attention, and attention brought problems. His buildings were judged. His methods were questioned. His best friend passed away, and his peaceful land became a place of tension Eustace didn't ask for. These things, he just wanted to live honestly. He wanted to help people reconnect with nature. But the world doesn't always make space for people like him. And so, the sadness comes not from failure, but from the realization that no matter how far you run, the noise of the world still follows. Still, he carries on. That's the beauty of his story. Even in pain, he doesn't stop. He fights not just for his land, but for a way of life that many people have forgotten. Holding on to what matters today, Eustace Conway continues to live and teach at Turtle Island. He plants crops, feeds animals, and teaches kids how to build fires and respect nature. He's not just surviving, he's living with purpose. But behind his strong hands and wise eyes is a man who has faced deep sadness. He has watched his best friend die. He has fought the system, and he has had to protect the dream he built from scratch. But maybe that's what makes him a true mountain man, not the axe in his hand, but the heart that keeps beating even when the world tries to break it. Eustace reminds us that life isn't just about comfort or money. It's about meaning. It's about holding on to the things that matter: land, honesty, friendship, and freedom. And even if the world doesn't understand him, he stands tall, because sometimes the strongest people are the ones who stay. A dream deep in the mountains. Eustace Conway always dreamed of a life that was simple and close to nature. He didn't want to live in a city or work behind a desk. He didn't care about fancy cars or big buildings. He wanted to live the old way, like people did hundreds of years ago, using his hands to build, grow, and survive. That dream took shape in a place he called Turtle Island Preserve, a large piece of forest land in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina. He bought this land and slowly built everything himself: wooden cabins, barns, blacksmith shops, and outdoor kitchens, all using the skills and tools that our ancestors once used. But this wasn't just a home for Eustace. He wanted to share it. He believed young people needed to see what it meant to live off the land, to respect nature, and to learn the old ways. He invited students, volunteers, and visitors to come and live with him. They would help build, cook, clean, and learn about survival, farming, and responsibility. It was not just a peaceful place, it was alive with lessons, laughter, and hard work. Eustace believed he had created something special, a true gift for the world. But this dream came under attack. In 2012, Eustace faced one of the hardest moments of his life. Government inspectors came to Turtle Island and claimed that the buildings weren't safe. They said he had broken many building codes rules that apply to modern homes and businesses. They didn't care that his buildings were handmade in the old style. They didn't care about the purpose behind them. To them, it was simply illegal. They forced him to shut down the preserve and told everyone to leave. For Eustace, this was more than just a legal fight. It was a deep personal heartbreak. Everything he built, everything he believed in, was suddenly in danger. Building a life, not just a shelter. Eustace didn't build Turtle Island for comfort or money. He built it to prove something, to show that people could still live free and simple lives. Every log he hauled, every path he cleared, every wall he raised was a message to the modern world. He wanted to show that technology and fast-paced living weren't the only ways to survive. In fact, he believed they were slowly destroying the human spirit. That's why Turtle Island wasn't just his home, it was a living idea. People didn't just visit. They experienced a new or very old way of thinking. This wasn't easy work. Eustace lived without most modern tools. He used horses instead of tractors, collected water from springs, and heated with wood fires. His students and volunteers worked alongside him. They learned to cook over open flames, build with hand tools, and grow food from the soil. For many, it was life-changing. They said it helped them reconnect with nature, with others, and with themselves. And for Eustace, that was the true reward, not money or fame, but making a real difference in people's lives. But modern society doesn't always understand this kind of life. Officials saw Turtle Island not as a school or a retreat, but as a group of unsafe and unregulated buildings. They said the cabins had no proper plumbing, the kitchens were unsanitary, and the power sources were not up to code. They didn't see a community. They saw a risk. And when someone complained to the county, the inspectors came. They found nearly 80 pages of violations. In their eyes, Turtle Island was dangerous. In Eustace's eyes, they had missed the entire point. He had built something meaningful, and now it was being torn down, one rule at a time. A man versus the system. What happened next showed just how hard it could be for one man to stand up against the system. Eustace tried to explain that he wasn't running a business, but a school, a place for people to learn by doing. He said he wasn't trying to break the law. He just wanted to live differently, but the government didn't accept that. They said he had to follow the same rules as everyone else. That meant getting permits, hiring licensed builders, and installing modern systems. For someone like Eustace, that wasn't just expensive, it was against everything he believed in. The inspectors claimed the buildings were unsafe. They didn't have things like concrete foundations, fire exits, or electrical wiring that met state standards. The kitchen had no running water or traditional sinks. The outhouses were considered a health risk. The classrooms were just open-air shelters made from logs and rope. To Eustace, this was all part of the charm, the way people used to live. But to the county, it was unacceptable. They ordered him to shut down all programs and told his students and visitors to leave. Immediately, for many, it felt like the death of a dream. Eustace tried to fight back. He gave interviews, reached out to fans, and even spoke to the media. He explained that his way of life wasn't dangerous, it was intentional. He didn't want modern buildings. He didn't want machines or chemicals. Everything he did had a reason behind it, but the system didn't bend. The codes were the codes. If he wanted to keep Turtle Island open, he would have to change almost everything about it. For a man who had built it all with his hands and heart, that was a painful choice. He faced a terrible question. Was it better to stay true to his values, or to bend just enough to keep his dream alive? Behind the cameras and courtrooms, many people first saw Eustace on the History Channel show Mountain Men. The show followed him as he lived off the land, trained apprentices, and fought to protect his land from modern threats. Viewers loved him because he was different. He wasn't acting. He was living the life he truly believed in. But even the show couldn't fully show the pain and struggle behind the scenes. While cameras captured him building shelters and chasing off trespassers, they didn't show the legal papers, the court dates, or the long, lonely nights filled with worry. The show called his fight against the county his final stand. But that wasn't the full truth. The legal fight wasn't the only problem Eustace faced. In 2014, a woman named Kimberly Baker filed a lawsuit against him. She said she had worked at Turtle Island and that her health had been damaged by the conditions there. She said she was overworked, exposed to harmful chemicals, and mistreated. She also said she was not properly paid or protected. It was another blow to Eustace's already fragile situation. Now he wasn't just fighting the county, he was also defending himself from a personal lawsuit. Eustace denied the claims. He said she was a volunteer who came to learn and participate, not an employee. He said Turtle Island was not a factory or a business, it was a place of learning and sharing. Still, the lawsuit brought more attention to his project and not the kind he wanted. The media reported on it, and people began to ask questions. Was Eustace a hero or a rule breaker? Was Turtle Island a gift to the world or a danger to those inside it? The answers weren't simple. What was clear was that Eustace's dream was now caught in a storm of legal battles and public opinions. Holding on to the dream throughout all of this, Eustace didn't give up. He worked with engineers, lawyers, and safety experts to bring parts of Turtle Island up to code without changing its soul. It wasn't easy. It took time, money, and compromise. But slowly, he made progress. He got some permits approved. He found safer ways to do things without losing the spirit of his project. Supporters helped too. People donated, volunteered, and spread the word. They believed in what he was trying to do. They didn't want to see Turtle Island disappear. Eustace kept teaching. He kept showing people how to chop wood, build fires, and work with the land. He gave talks, wrote letters, and reminded everyone that the old ways still had value. He wasn't just saving a place. He was saving a way of thinking, a belief that people can live simply, freely, and in harmony with the earth. That message mattered, especially in a world full of noise, screens, and speed. For many, Turtle Island became a symbol of something purer, something we had lost but could still find again. Even now, Turtle Island isn't perfect. It still faces challenges. It's still a small place trying to survive in a big, rule-heavy world. But it's still standing, and that's because one man refused to let go of his dream. Eustace Conway didn't ask for fame or money. He asked for a chance to live in peace, to teach others, and to be free. That's a story worth remembering. Because sometimes, the bravest thing a person can do is build something by hand, believe in it with all their heart, and never let it go. The mountain man who lost his best friend. Eustace Conway's quiet pain in the mountains of North Carolina, tucked away from the noise of the modern world. There is a place called Turtle Island Preserve. It's not a typical town, or even a normal camp. It's a peaceful piece of land where people live close to nature, chopping their own wood, boiling their own food, and learning how to survive without phones or the internet. This special place was created by a man named Eustace Conway. He wanted to show others that life could be simple, meaningful, and full of hard work and real connection to the land. But life at Turtle Island hasn't always been easy. Eustace has had to fight with local governments who didn't understand his way of living. He's also had to deal with the hardest pain of all, losing his best friend, Preston Roberts. For fans of the show Mountain Men, these two men seemed like they could handle anything. They chopped trees, built cabins, and lived tough lives. But nothing could prepare Eustace for the day he said goodbye to Preston forever. Their story is not just about mountain life. It's about friendship, struggle, and how one man